Aloha, beautiful beings, and welcome to another episode of the Yoni Havana podcast, where we explore consciousness, looking into how things work in the universe so that we can enjoy life more and become more whole. My guest today is my dear friend and business partner, Extended States Guide, Michael Tierno. In this episode, we talk about the Men of Integrity retreats and community. Who is it for? What can one expect from our retreats and community? How we came up with it, what is this transformational work, and much more. So if you find value in this show, and I hope you do, please share with someone you love. So enjoy this conversation about the most transformational and profound work that I've been a part of with Michael Tierno. Aho. Michael Tierno, my friend, my business partner, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be a part of this.
Thank you for being in my life. Thank you for being here live. You know, I'm very excited to get into this conversation. We finished one of our most profound retreats, if not the most profound retreat that we've done so far in the Men of Integrity. And before we dive in this conversation, I just want to do a quick breathwork exercise just to get grounded. I was running around with my daughter at the farmer's market and whatnot. So are you game to do a quick one that I'll lead us through? And
lead
I'm
away.
Inviting everybody else who's listening to this conversation or watching this conversation to join us. If you're not into it, just fast forward probably about 30 seconds total. All right, here's how it's going to go. I'm going to take 2 deep inhales, hold for 5 seconds, and then we're going to exhale super slowly. You ready? All right, deep inhale.
Yep.
Another one. Hold for 5. All right. That was nice. All right. So, you know, I'm still moved, and I feel like we talk about the experience of being cracked open at the retreats, and I feel like I'm much more cracked open days after. Yes. So it's crazy. Where do we even begin? I mean, where do we even begin with this experience that super organically happened, that we're even hosting these retreats, doing this work, and people are being attracted, and we came up with this program that is building on one another. What do you call the arc of experience that we're having that has been revolutionary? It's been transformative, revolutionary. Then we have the community. Where do we even begin to talk about Men of Integrity, which is the most purposeful, profound, and important work in my life?
Where do we begin? It is hard to know where to begin, just like you said. I will say something that sounds very salesy. I was thinking about this. I've been involved in like leadership program. There's a whole bunch of different modalities or businesses that do these leadership intense and, try and crack you open without medicine sort of modalities. I've been with a therapist for many years. I've done men's group for many years. I've done ayahuasca retreats in Peru. I've done one-on-one medicine journeys with a counselor, all sorts of modalities. And the impact and the outcome of what we experience in MOI is like, without questions, the most intensely profound and deep that I've ever been a part of. And I've seen literally hundreds of people in transformational experiences go out, make progress. I'm serious progress with all these other modalities, but the profundity of the sort of awareness, consciousness switch, clearing out, whatever you want to call it, that happens to the vast majority of participants at an MOI experience is without question. I don't even know how to describe it. I mean, I don't even know how to like put a number on it, how to quantify it. It's just I'm still reeling. We just got back on Tuesday. I'm still reeling by some of the conversations that we had, some of the experiences that had. The way I kind of been thinking about it this week as if we had the retreat itself, it felt like we were in a portal. Like when I was leaving and getting gas, I was like, what happened there? It was so
Mm.
potent, so thick with this conscious energy of just transformation. It's very challenging to describe it, and words kind of weaken the message, I think, almost. So it's challenging.
Yeah,
We're gonna have to figure that out.
absolutely. You know, for those who have not heard about men of integrity, and before they check out the website or testimonials and such, one thing that was crazy to me is that two people out of three, we were supposed to have five participants in this retreat. We ended up having three for whatever reasons, and those other two will join the next one. Two of them had a condition that they said was resolved that I've never even heard of, which is complex PTSD. Never heard of this before. Two out of three have this, coming in and healing from this, which has been going on in their lives for decades. I don't know if it's 2 decades. I don't know if it's 3 decades. I don't really know. I know it's for decades. Healing from that in this retreat. I'm sharing this because I'm still blown away. And I will say again, and we will get into it. We have not planned to start this retreats, to start this community, to do this work. Not a plan, not trying to do it. And that's part of the beauty about this work. I didn't have any intentions of doing this. And it's and the calling was there also for ayahuasca. I got the calling for ayahuasca in January 2016. We went to do ayahuasca. I mean, I came with you. You've already done it, but it was the first time for me, August 2018. So I've been patient, with the callings. With this calling, we want to do some work, and we'll get into it, together for the sake of us doing work together, individually supporting one
Mm-hmm.
another. And then 6 months later, we're hosting this retreat with a few more men, and now it's grown to a community of over 20 men. It, I don't even. I mean, it's crazy. The things are crazy, beautiful, amazing, and yeah. I mean, I think let's dive into. Let's talk quickly about what is men of integrity. And I love when you talk about it for a host of reasons. And one of them is, as people have told you now, this is now it's beyond me, and this is why I love it. Because a lot of times I call you the father, and now, as you've seen from other retreats, people see the father persona, kind of the divine masculine in you, more than I'm saying this. So now I wasn't even involved in the situation, and these guys who are, whether in their 30s or 40s or whatnot, they say you are my father. Whether they have a father now living or not, they see you as their father. So I know it's a big weight, and it's a big compliment and a responsibility to take on, and be like, okay, and not to take it egoically and all that. But I know that you're there. So, and you came up with the name, Man of Integrity. So I'd love for you to explain your own words. What is Man of Integrity, and a bit about the retreats and the community that we've created. And I'll chime in as this unfolds.
Okay. I think a man of integrity is someone who's just connected with themselves in the deepest way. And it's, I think, a lifelong process. We're always trying to untangle the mess of our upbringing and our belief structures and whatnot, our conditioning. And man of integrity is just, we have a list of, we're working on the kind of credo for the group. I think that encapsulating and responding rather than reacting. That's the kind of easiest thing. It's like you're co-creating with the universe what's happening in real time, and you're understanding what's happening, and you're responding rather than lashing out and reacting in some sort of reactive way. That's what a man of integrity is. Deeply embodied in his masculine, his divine masculine, meaning that he's going out into the world passionate about doing good work, taking care of his family, taking care of his friends, taking care of his children, and going out and doing something good for the benefit of humanity, and having some sort of passion about that. Man of integrity is capable, is always learning. There's a whole list of things. And I think when we are, before we come to the retreat, or before the men come to the retreat, they're kind of, I also kind of think of humans a little bit like a computer as an analog, and there's all this crap operating system going on, conditioning, key experiences that have defined us in a way that causes us to react rather than respond, beliefs that may not be productive for us to be operating on, triggers, all these sorts of things that society, our upbringing, experiences, growing up in this, consumer society has brought upon us. And then in the 4-day arc, which is, we could talk about it later, but training, it is deep dive, connecting with divinity, and then brotherhood and community. Each of the 4 days, we have a different emphasis. Through those 4 days, there's a kind of shedding of all these layers of conditioning and patterning that causes us to react rather than respond. When we release these conditionings, for lack of a better, these patternings, these reactions, reaction states, and we're just kind of settled into the present moment and able to like move forward in our lives in a different way with more equanimity and peace. Does that answer the question?
That's good stuff. You know, just while we're there, I'm thinking, why do you think men in our retreats are able to let go, shed, and also be vulnerable, to be cracked open and share with other strangers that they meet at the retreat differently than doing work? Let's say I'm going doing the work and doing this similar work of shedding and letting go and being vulnerable in other instances. I was thinking about it. I'm not even sure if I have the answer.
Well, it's a surprise question, and I'm going to take a crack at answering it. I think because it's almost like a do or die moment when you come to the MOI, because it's going to be hard. We don't tell anybody it's going to be easy. It's going to get to the core of your being. And so you have to come in, surrender to it. You have to come in, surrender to it. It was like, okay. And because of the surrendering to the unknown, which in many cases, this is an unknown. And I was surprised that I had a theory that people who had past experiences with medicine and stuff like that would maybe have less profound experiences, but it's not. The container and the arc that we provide for these gentlemen, that allows the complete deconstruction and reconstruction in a new way, getting rid of all the old junk. And so I think because there is this fear of like getting to the root, and no one comes to MLI retreat without fear, like just all like, hey, I'm just going to just charge on in and it's going to be casual, just another day. No one comes in there. Everybody's has a little bit of trepidation, at least in some cases, like deep concern, because we don't know oftentimes what is in there. But because people are coming into the experience with this worry about like how this is going to unfold for them, knowing that they need to surrender to this process, and that surrender is the key. And we talk about it of just like, let it go, let it go, let it go. And also because I think of our personalities, our way of being with participants is very safe, very comforting. I think we allow for people to feel safe in their own skin, sometimes for the very first time in their entire lives, and give them the opportunity to witness the deep profundity of their being, maybe also for the first time in their entire life. And those two things, the container of being held in the safe space, and also being brought, and then the totality of their being, or a large majority of the totality of their being that might have been under some armor for some time, being witnessed in the safe space, really allows for this vulnerable work to happen. That can't happen. That doesn't, not can't, I shouldn't say can't, but doesn't often happen in other modalities, or I've not seen it happen at this level.
Yes, it's huge. There are a couple of things that come to mind. One is that our retreats are targeted and are for masculine men. So we make it quite a niche. And, people have asked us about co-ed. People ask us about people that are not necessarily as much in this masculinity, and we attract people that are quite masculine. And I think then and there, for the first time, for this niche group in society, they've seen that other masculine men are able to be vulnerable, open up, and that's a safe place for them to do so, perhaps, as you're saying, for the first time. Because being in a room with, say,
Yep.
other strangers, then maybe women or other men or who knows what other entities, but they may not have this container. And I think once one person starts opening up in that way, a masculine man, they see another masculine man doing this, then they like, oh, okay, this guy's doing this. Then that, it's kind of a snowball effect
Mhm.
and a chain reaction that opens up and opens up. And over as the days keep going in the retreat, I think people's ability to really let go, be vulnerable, and share what's true to their heart and the experiences that they've had increases.
Mhm.
So that's why I think that the deeper experience there is by seeing these other masculine men that, for the most part, are not opening up. They don't feel safe to open up from all the conditioning we've talked about.
Mhm.
The other thing that came to mind is you talked about deconstruction and really, pulling apart and coming together. This is my sixth MOI retreat. I've done a good amount of work before then,
Mhm.
and there's still stuff that I want to deconstruct. So
Right.
I want to touch on that point for the listeners. This doesn't mean that somebody is coming in broken. They want to take all their shit apart and put it together. They're looking for a whole 100% reset. Not at all. It's about the layers of the onion,
Mhm.
knowing that everybody in these bodies, anybody in a third dimensional body has something that they want to deconstruct, let go, forgive, accept, bring out to the world to be expressed and transmuted. And I want to touch on that point in case somebody's thinking like, this is for somebody's broken, or if somebody hears about ayahuasca or any other healing modality with medicine that is deep and hard, this is for somebody who has an addiction, it's for somebody who's been abused. I mean, yes, absolutely, yes, this is great for them, and a good amount of stories come from those because those are deep transformational stories. There's all kinds of other layers I will share in this last retreat, which I did not expect, because I usually take a dose on the deep dive day that is about light to medium, especially for me. And since we had savages that were doing the work themselves, I was able to let go in a smaller dose. And oh boy, was I deconstructing. And oh boy, did I go deep this time. It was one of the hardest days and most beautiful days of my life. But for a few hours there, I was deep in the trenches doing ancestral healing work that I did not expect. That I'm very happy to do, especially after the fact. In the moment, in the moment, I
That's
was
a,
I was happy that I'm doing this. At the same time, I was in so much pain and such terror of the visions that I've had of my ancestors, in the DNA of my body, in the energetic field that I am. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on that point because I think it's important for people to hear that there's always some deconstruction to being done, and always more another layer of opening up and letting go and undoing karma, and whether that's individual karma or family karma or planet karma. There's work to be done. That work
Mhm.
that can be done, and for brave, courageous men that are looking for growth and looking to be the best versions of themselves, knowing that there's always another version. This work is amazing. And yes, it may sound a bit salesy. And as I've told many people in this is not a main source of income for both of us. This is a main source of healing and work and
Mhm.
that we've been called to do. There's a
Oh,
lot of work that goes into making these happen, a lot of sacrifice on family time, on all kinds of other things that are going on. And we are called and we're putting this information out there because we think this work is very important. And I will say, to cap this rant, is that I think that everything in the universe is as important, not important,
equally.
equally,
Because
because
the
it
same
just
thing.
is.
Mhm. But
But when looking in this duality, looking into the universe really in that separate itself of experiences, and how the lower states of consciousness of fear, anger, shame, guilt, etc., do not feel well, this work is important to bring more of the higher vibrations into more forgiveness, acceptance, reasoning, love, joy, peace. And that's where the importance is, because more souls and the planet itself enjoy these higher vibrations more. This is why this work is important. And that's where I leave this rant at the moment.
Yeah, it's awesome. And the only thing I would add, just maybe just reiterating what one piece of what you said was, because I say it often, is that the work of transformation isn't a one and done thing. And I think as much as I love some of these documentaries and books that have come out about the healing power of plant medicine, they kind of get people right at the initial experiences. And they're like, wow, this big part of my life has transformed. It sounds like a one and done, but I like to say that the work of transformation is a lifetime's worth of work. And that's what we've been put in this embodiment, in this planet to do, is to continuously transform, whether you are undoing karma or however you want to think of it, or undoing trauma, or like working through to get to a place of clarity. So your work is done. I say two things happen. Either you become a Buddha, right? It's completely like enlightened being. Everything is gone. You're in the constant state of enlightenment, the presence, which I'm not close to being, or you die and you come back and you do it again and do some more work. You know, it's not whether MOI or some other transformational paths are not the only thing that you should do. Like you said, the onion, I love that analogy. This is, you keep peeling back, and when you go back to the well, when you're ready for more, when you are ready for more, not just keep going back to the well all the time for, more and more medicine or whatnot. It's out, thinking about and integrating what you have learned from your previous journeys. But when you go back to the well and you say, oh, there's more under there. Oh, there's more under there. Let me work more. And as you keep going deeper and deeper into deeper and deeper self-awareness, which is self-awareness is presence, right? You get to peace, and to more and more peace until, like you said, you either become a Buddha or you die. So
Yes. A couple of things that bring two things I want to talk about. So one, on enlightenment and the higher states of consciousness, is one who's on a path to bring more light into the world and to radiate more light and to help others experience more light. What I realized is that the more we're willing, as some people will say, light workers, or let's say people that are willing to do the work, the more we're willing to experience the lower vibrations, the lowest of vibrations, the deeper darkness, this is the more chances that we're going to have the higher states. I have been in my life, I don't know if that's the correct grammar, but in my life for years, I was avoiding and deflecting the lower vibrations of sadness, anger, all of that. I'm just kind of I kept a baseline of happiness that people noticed in the CrossFit gym that we went to together, right, which is how we met in San Francisco CrossFit. They're like, oh, Yoni's always happy. Yoni's always happy. Yeah, I maintained a very good baseline of happiness, just a very, very well, because I did not allow myself to go to the lower vibrations at all. I was avoiding keeping that trauma in my body and the pain, and really also not honoring other people's pain, including my wife and family members and friends and whatnot. And once I allowed also for me to experience those other states, realizing that's an essential part of growth, I started experiencing higher states of bliss, of peace and love and joy that I did not even know were attainable. The other piece on enlightenment and such, I realized also once a person has a taste of enlightenment, and let's say what our teacher Aubrey Degnan calls in her book the kindergarten of enlightenment, because there are many levels to enlightenment. That doesn't mean they're going to stay in enlightenment for the rest of their lives and from then on just move up. They can still experience anger, a lower vibration. And the idea, I was just talking to another man of integrity earlier on the phone, and I told that person is that it's okay to experience them. It's going to happen. Do not expect that once you level up, you're going to stay in those higher levels. It's the question is, how long will one spend in the lower states? Meaning, what kind of awareness do they have? Are they able to see the lesson, have the experience, taste it, learn from it, and let go very quickly? And this is also what Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about. Eventually, we want to be in that state for seconds. Not in terms of getting away from it, but in terms of it's not really beneficial. It's beneficial to be there, to visit it, to learn from it, and let go. And the more awakened we are, the more aware we are, the more equipped we are with a lot of tools, it won't be necessary to be in that state for more than seconds eventually. Even if it's minutes, it's very beneficial. I don't even know how many people are spending only minutes in a lower state. I can still go through a lower state for hours. It's very rare, I will say, in my life at the moment, or perhaps has been, that I will be in a lower state for days.
Mhm.
I can be in a lower state for a few hours. That's also rare, but usually it will be minutes or double digit minutes if something quite upsetting has happened or is happening. So that's, striving for what is this, recognize, being there, and get back to the baseline or the average level of consciousness that one is capable of holding. So that's what I wanted to touch on. And the next thing I want to talk about is the integration, because the integration that happens in our retreats, and I know from a bunch of one-on-one work that has been done that I know of, that is amazing. I still promote a lot of one-on-one work, a lot of other retreats that I still promote, whether they're of deep medicine outside of this country, in the United States, in the country. It doesn't even matter. Something different is happening with the integration in Men of Integrity retreats.
Yes.
And I think, and I'd like to dive into it because I'd like to hear your opinion. But what comes to mind is, one, again, we have masculine men, a very intimate small group of them who get to know one another pretty well. So they're not strangers anymore. They're all on the same page. They're all have been hiding to some extent the true feelings that they have. They're being able to support one another in there, and they have days. I don't really know the time, but we're about 100 hours in total of unpacking and unpacking and hearing each other's stories, to the point that they can help one another unpack and realize what is going on in here. And I think this is why the integration in these retreats have been so successful in unpacking traumas and letting things go and whatnot, and wisdom to come in and responsibility to take place for one's own life, which I want to touch on that after. But what do you think? There's anything I'm missing here on why the integration in our retreats is
Well,
so next level?
yeah, I mean, we stumbled upon this just because it was through intuition, through our divine feminine intuition, to have the community continue on past the retreat and broaden into a broader, larger community of everybody who has been through the retreat and have an annual camping trip and all these different things, to have this community thing after the retreat. And after we were doing this for some time, and we were seeing that the changes that people had committed to had stayed, and people weren't slipping back into old patterns and behaviors and reactions, I started listening to John Bereke's Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, which is a 50-hour lecture series on YouTube that is really heavy, interesting, profound. And he explained in one of the lectures, was talking about the work of transformation, of which MOI is one modality of. And he was saying it takes three things. Transformation in general, it happens when you have a shift of perspective. So when you see something from an alternative point of view, because usually we're just seeing it from us, me, this is the world and me. And when you can see something, for example, on someone else's perspective, or with medicine, oftentimes you can see it from multiple perspectives or see really deeply how these things happen. So the shift in perspective, then those a shift in a perspective that happens in a ritualistic and intentional way, meaning that you're going into it to try and solve something in your life, or come to something in your life from a different perspective. And then critical third piece that is not, that you will not find in almost, I mean, any other transformational work that I know of, really, is the entering into what he calls, or someone else called, that he was referencing, called entering into a sapiential community. So basically a wisdom tradition where everybody is supporting everybody to continue the work of that transformation and the way of being that transformation calls us to be. So if you look at all the other sort of transformational modalities, like, for example, therapy is kind of like the third part. You have integration part. You have that entering into the wisdom tradition, or sapiential community with your therapist, where you're working out what's going on a day to day. But you never really had the first two parts, which is the looking at things from a different framework in a ritualistic setting. So that's therapy. So it's missing the first bit. You go to an ayahuasca retreat, of which I have an ayahuasca retreat in Peru, Heart Sanctuary, and you go there, and we do a little follow up, but we're not tracking all of our participants over time forever. So you have the ritualistic setting of a frame of reference with your frame of reference with the medicine, with the ayahuasca. That happens, switch, and we have some things that are specific to our retreat that you won't get in other retreat settings, meaning you're going to meet with the shaman afterwards. But when you're done with the retreat, when the week is over, kind of let you go. There's not that follow-up. We do have a follow-up a month later, but it's not a quote unquote lifelong follow-up, entering into a community of people who have experienced similar things and support each other. So that doesn't happen. I was part of a men's group for many years, and also you're getting some pieces of this transformational part, but not the whole thing. MOI, Men of Integrity, is the only group that I know of which we stumbled into this, three pieces, stumbled into it. It was working. We were having results. And then from externally through John Viveki, I heard that he described what we were doing. And so that's what I would like to add. It's an incredible, amazing.
Yeah, I do want to make sure that the audience knows that the piece that you described right now is the additional piece beyond integration happening in the retreats, which is unique on its own, because we have 4 days with now an intimate group to do this integration. And then once that happens, everybody, all the participants join the larger MOI community. Everybody's been through the retreats, the initiation part. Everybody's on the same page in terms of what it takes to do this work and what path they're on, and they continue supporting one another, learning from one another, making friendships. We gather monthly online. People connect with one another and hang out and whatnot, and reach out to one another individually. Then we have the annual camping trip right now that we're doing for the first time. Yes, I mean it's incredible. It's incredible, and I will say again, we have not planned any of that. On that note, I'd like to give briefly the story of how Men of Integrity came about. So I'll start from my perspective, and then you can chime in. Actually, you know what? Let's backtrack it, because that's, man, how far back do we want to go? Do we want to go to the Peru experience, or is that
Well, let's go
what do you
from the
think?
Peru experience. I'll tell that story,
All right,
and then
okay, perfect.
so
All right, that's a good one.
So this is about almost 8 years ago. 8 years ago, I think I went to Peru for the first time. I was a plant medicine, not experienced guy, fully immersed in this world of consumerism. And I was on this, and the longer story is I ended up stumbling upon being called to go try ayahuasca in Peru. And I went to this retreat center. And I remember being on the plane, I was writing in my journal, and I said, well, either what I see is all there is, or there's something more. I have no idea. It was kind of my last hope that I didn't even I was not attached to this being anything more. I was like, well, we're going to try this and see what happens. Anyway, it got cracked open, changed my life. It was like a big, profound change. I was like, I realized how wrong I was about so many things that I, really attached to and whatnot. And anyway, long story short, I had a transformational experience in Peru. A few months later, 6 months later, I think I'd done another ayahuasca ceremony in the United States, and then went to an ayahuasca ceremony again in the United States, and with the intention of, I was feeling a little isolated I was just doing family and work. I didn't have like a peer group of male friends, and I came into it asking for, my intention was like, hey, how can I get some male friends? And I did the ayahuasca journey, and it just said, go to noon class, which was our CrossFit class at noon, of which I had been a part of and had friends there. And it just go to noon class. So I show up. So the ayahuasca ceremony was on Saturday. I show up on Monday, and lo and behold, you had been at that noon class out of the blue. You hadn't been to CrossFit to that gym anyway for like a few months or whatever. You showed up just on that day, just popped in to have a class. And our friend Nick was there also. He was wearing some shoes. He's like, hey, it was funny. I was thinking about you on Saturday. I wore these shoes that had special meaning to us. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. At the end of the the end of the class, she said, "Hey, Mike, you want to come over to my house with a bunch of guys, right? Already looking for a community of guys to, be a part of in community. Or it's all men. We're going to do a podcast club." What's that? What's a podcast club? Podcast club is we're all going to listen to a podcast, and then we're going to get together and discuss it, similar to a book club, with a little bit less effort in terms of needing to read a whole book. We're just going to listen to a podcast. We're going to do a deep dive, have a conversation, have some breakfast, and enjoy each other's company. I said, "Oh, that sounds like a lot of fun. What's the podcast about?" And Yoni goes, "You go, ayahuasca. Have you heard of it?" I was like, "Holy shit. I am here because ayahuasca told me to come here." So then we do the podcast that next Saturday, 4 days later.
Yeah. To quickly, sorry to interrupt, but you didn't say anything to me, right?
No,
so
I
you didn't say anything to me. You're just, yeah. So no, this is an internal conversation we're having.
It was just natural. You say, "Hey, you want to come over? We're getting together, part of the, friends group, whoever wants to, if they're interested in having some intellectual discussion about some interesting issues, podcast club." And so I asked you, "What's the podcast this week about?" You said, "About this crazy stuff, ayahuasca. Have you heard of it?" It's like, and I was like, "Have I heard of it? I just came back 6 months ago or a year ago. I did it. I've done it." So I was the only person who had done it in the group. And so, of course, spotlight on Michael Tierno there. Well, this is what happened, blah, blah, blah. I tell the story. And then like five of the folks that had gone to your house that day all decided that they want to go to Peru. And it ended up being a group of three, myself, you, and my friend Matt, that ended up going to Peru the following year to experience ayahuasca again. And so that was the ayahuasca telling me to go to new class and getting more disciples of her, so to speak.
Which was crazy. And I will say, what also was crazy is I decided about the podcast club because I've been wanting, again, like you, a community of men at the time to discuss stuff that is a bit more deep and intentional. When I chose this podcast, though, and I was listening to a bunch of podcasts by then, I don't even know how I found this podcast. I was not looking for ayahuasca. It was not one of my favorite shows. However, that podcast landed in my lap, and also in terms of sharing, there were more topics than ayahuasca. I don't even remember what it was, but that was one that reminded me, like, oh yeah, I've heard about this at this point almost 2 years ago. I had a calling. It sounds awesome. And I didn't think also that anybody else would have the experience. Nonetheless, this would be the main topic of conversation. What I've heard about it, it's very intense. It's for a specific type of people. And also what I've heard about it from a little bit of research, which was a while before, is for people usually who have wanted to resolve something that is quite timely for them. And they're in a good amount of pain. So all of these things, now in hindsight, I understand all these nudges from the universe are like, oh, here it is, and like not really having much control about I don't really have control about anything, but really going with things and just being in flow and doing things out of,
can you say synchronicity?
Healthy,
like synchronicity,
yes.
like full on, like, here you go. She literally told me to go to that noon class. I showed up there. You were there talking about ayahuasca. It was bizarre, wacko. Like, how do you explain that?
So, okay, so let's fast forward a little bit. So we went to ayahuasca retreat. That was in 2018. The three of us, fast forward a few years after, it's 2020, December 2020. We decide, the two of us, you and me, to go and do some deep work together side by side, because we don't even know anybody else at the moment, at that time, who wants to do the deep work. So we're like, all right, we both can handle some deep experiences, but let's do it one next to another, for the energetics and fun and safety. So I find an RV of Hip Camp next to Yosemite. I fly to California. At that point, I'm already living in Georgia. For a long time, we live in California. Then the CrossFit thing, and we live close to one another. But that's before we do this work. Just getting to the ayahuasca, and from that point, a big pause. Anyway, so I fly out to California. Forget how it was exactly. You pick me up from the airport. We go, and you brought some new medicines to me. We do this new medicine that night. And the next day, we're about to do what we still do, the deep dive in our retreats. So we prepared the deep dive, and both of us, this is going to be a deep day today. we're going deep, baby.
Mm-hmm.
And lo and behold, we take our dose, which however things were working, we don't get an experience at all. Not only not a deep one, not a light one at all.
Yes.
And I don't even know where it came from. We decided to sit in that RV,
Yeah.
get a I use my phone as a hotspot for some internet connection, and we had the idea of doing a men's retreat
Mhm.
that involves medicine. We start coming up with the program, and we look at some Airbnbs or VRBOs. How would we do it? We start writing days. What would the food would be? I don't even know where the hell did it came from, or where in heavens. Forget about that. As I think about language, where in heavens that came from. That thing is unfolding, and we're within a couple hours. We have a program. We have a name. You're like, yeah, man of integrity, and feel pretty good about it. The next day we do another medicine ceremony. It was super dry in California. We do a kind of a crazy drive with your 4x4 vehicle, and we had quite a day, and just feeling the COVID feels of whatever is going on in the world, and specifically in that space. So we're doing this, and we're hanging out, and we're doing. I think that was night 3, and I think it was the last day. So it's still how we close all retreats, with the last ceremony of brotherhood and community, and we do that. And the way we feel about the program that we came up with, and the connection that we have, and the sacred fire that you did, and all of these things come together, and like, all right. I mean, we're ready to pursue this thing. We reach out to a few people that we know, some of them not even that well. And before we know it, fast forward 6 months, we're doing our first retreat in 12,000 feet in Colorado. And boy, oh boy, I remember when it's the second day, the 3 men that came to our retreat were going deep. These gentlemen were just savages. And we're in the kitchen there. I still have the vivid memory of us hugging, like, pretty good. Doing pretty good over here. This is legit.
Yeah.
And it was just mind blowing, heart blowing. Also, my experience there was one of the deepest experiences I've ever had. Oh boy! And now we're about almost 2 years since the first retreat.
No,
We've done 6
over
of
2
them.
years, I think. Over 2 years.
Oh, well,
Tamales was 2
June
years.
2021.
2 years since the first retreat. 2 years since we
Yeah.
came up with the idea was in December of 2022. Right.
2020. Yes.
Yeah.
So we're almost. So yeah, I mean, the end of 2023, which is this year that we're recording this, will be 3 years, and who knows until then what will be then. We will have our first annual camping trip of the whole community before then, and most likely another podcast will be recorded of telling how this community is grown and whatnot, and what other magic has happened. A lot happened pretty quickly, and that's also given that in this process, my wife was pregnant. I have a new kid in the picture, so we weren't even going on all cylinders by any means. We've been going pretty easy with the growth, and everything came organically. These calls of getting the community together, I don't even know how we came up with that either. No plans at all. There were not plans.
Co-creating with the universe. Co-creating with the universe. So we're just letting it lead us where we go. And that's a key tenet that you and I have witnessed now. As we've done 6 retreats. I think we could call it the one that we did in the trailer, our first retreat, but which would be 7, but is that in every retreat, there's been something that we kind of allow for who shows up, the group of people. And it seems very potent that the people that arrive are the people that needed to be there. Even this last one where 2 people, because of circumstances, weren't able to come. It was like, oh, this was the way it was supposed to be. And they seem to be getting more and more potent. And also just want to put a pin in it that we make changes after every retreat. And so based on, the experiences we've had in the past, and we got it pretty amazingly dialed in. I don't know if you read my mind or I read yours, but we were in our Mike, our other co-host there, and just working together, such a beautiful, seems effortless. I mean, really, how the whole thing
feels effortless,
unwinds and goes through the 4 days. So, yeah. pretty amazed at how it's unfolded.
Yeah, and we've expanded the team. We have two more gentlemen on our team. Both of them have been to 2 retreats on their own. At the end of their second retreat, organically it came that we're like, oh, this gentleman would be great on our team, and we've invited them to join the team, and both of them were honored and joined the team with great grace and strength. And as you've been saying, what has been going on is things are just happening. People are doing them on the team in a way without even asking, without if it's necessary, or if they can't do it, they do it. They trust it's the right thing to do, and then there's huge appreciation. A lot of times when I'm thinking like, oh, I'm gonna do this, I'm like, oh no, already taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of other things I don't even think about doing, such as the beautiful artwork that you came up with, and the drum circle that we've now added to our retreats. All kinds of things that are not even in my consciousness happening because of that expansion, and that brings deeper expansion within all the participants in the group and all the members in the group. And I'm so blown away by it. It's, to think also now that we've been tasked. So I will say 3 of us on the team. We have four guys on the team. 3 of us now see the same woman who is a therapist, who's an enlightened being, she's in her mid 80s. She's in the, well, what else do we say about this woman?
Gift to the planet, gift to the universe.
A gift to the universe.
Transmitting wisdom onto us, the next generation, so that we can let it flow in a larger way to other people.
And the support that we get now that the 3 of us individually see her for our individual growth and for this community growth. Also, we did not plan on seeing her. One of us has been seeing her for years as a therapist. Now, you started seeing her. Now I started seeing her for growth, and she's very much in support of the work we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Has a lot of knowledge in doing this type of work. And she gave us recently the nudge of like, okay, so think about what this looks like in 3 years. I'll give a little bit of information here. We do a 5-year plan exercise for all the participants in the Men of Integrity retreats of thinking about their lives in 5 years. So now we get the mirror back. It's like, oh, think about this business, community, whatever that is, which is all of it, in 3 years. And it's a bit, I would say it's a bit scary, and it's also beautiful and exciting to even sit down, which we haven't yet. We just got the task recently to think about where is this community and impact and work will expand to. And all the other men that we've been attracting into our community are helping with this organically too. It's not like, oh, I think I want to bring this person into the community, which I have talked to a person I met recently, and I was thinking this is a great person to have. Lo and behold, was not a good fit for the work and the community itself, as I had in hindsight. But yeah, things are happening quite rapidly, and I see them as the universe at large. Things are accelerating, and I think things will accelerate. I will say, based on another teacher that I have named Washela Sananda, who has been on the podcast. At this airing, I'm not sure if the podcast with her will be before or after this airing, yet to be determined, but look out for that one, Washela Sananda. And she's been talking about the accelerated growth that the planet will have between 2024 and 2044. What does that mean? I don't even know, but it will be crazy, most likely. So in a good way, in a hard way, in all of the ways, we're growing. And I think there's a shift that is happening that is healthy, and this is the work that we're doing is part of that shift.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big part of that shift, and I'm very excited about that. We've gotten a lot of strengthening, supportive statements from a lot of people that I know in my life for a while, or people that I just met, and when I tell them about this work, and they're like, wow, you gotta keep doing this in terms of the work specifically with masculine men. I do want to shift gears a little bit because there's something that keeps coming to my mind that I want to talk about, because I think it's so beneficial to know and to pursue. And I think you call this the 4 level of responsibilities that a man or a person would have And I was thinking like, yeah, this is exactly what it is, but I don't remember how to describe it. So I don't know if it's 4 or 3. You
Four
remind
levels.
me in the audience of what it is.
So I don't remember what all 4 levels are, but I know the end caps, and I know that this came from work in sports psychology. I can't remember who came up with it originally, but it's been adapted into a lot of like leadership sort of work. The lowest level, so there's 4 levels of responsibility. The lowest level is of responsible. Level 1 responsibility is where you are not responsible for everything. The victim mentality. Everything happens to me. I am a passive participant on this life of this shit sandwich of life. Everything bad happens to me. I mean, this is, we all have met people like this. Nothing happens in my favor. Everything's falling apart at all times. It's always externally motivated. Then at the top level, 4th level responsibility is hard to uh, really come to terms with. But there's some exercises that one can do where they kind of really witness it in this way, which is like literally everything, me as a conscious being going out to the world, everything that happens to me, I am responsible for through my actions, through my interactions, through my co-creating with my level of consciousness, how I engage with the world is very much causally related to my state in life. And therefore it's very empowering because when you have 4th level responsibility, say, I can actually, no matter what my circumstances, I can always move forward to make things better. Now, that doesn't mean that you can just manifest anything out of thin air necessarily. Maybe you can. There's, a law of attraction as when people teach that kind of thing. But it does mean that things can be better tomorrow than they are today in all ways, even if it's just your way of being in the world, which then changes everything around you. But then there's 2 other stages, level 2 and level 3, which are one less level closer to, I mean, level 2 is kind of like everything happens to me, but maybe I can have my foot in the door. And level 3 is I'm almost fully responsible. I'm responsible for more things. I can't articulate those 2 levels because they're not important to like what I teach and what I talk about. But definitely 4th level responsibility is when you can see like, wow, I am, this happened to me because I did this. It's easy to see in hindsight when you look at someone else's life, say like, well, to see what are the decisions that they made that caused the pain that they're in very many times. And it gets a little harder to like wrap that around people, you know, for whom the life that they were born into, like what responsibility did they take? And some spiritual teachers say that we chose the life that we came in. Our Atman, our spirit came into this life and chose that life. And so that's the first sort of initiation into having been responsibility for the outcomes that happen and manifest so that we can undo karma and whatever. But I think it's a very empowering way to be.
Agreed. I want to touch on something there. When you talk about responsibility, you mentioned that perhaps one has created the pains in their life. I want to put the emphasis there also all the joys and all the great things in their lives.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I was talking to a friend of mine who was saying like he had a conversation with his 8-year-old daughter who said something about whatever was the conversation. She said, but daddy, you're lucky because you're skinny. And he's trying to explain to her
Right.
like, no, like daddy's not lucky because he's skinny. Daddy goes to the gym every morning. Daddy eats fairly healthy food most of the time. And I was talking to him we had the further conversation of this guy's a business owner. So he created his life in a way that he has more freedom to go to the gym at a certain time or not miss the gym and have all kinds of other freedoms. That's not to say that also somebody would not enjoy working on somebody else's mission and think like, wow, this is my life's mission, working in this mission. This is exactly my mission as well, and I fit in this role amazingly. I think this is beautiful. I do want to say in this 4th level of responsibility, the way that I see it from my perspective, and in terms about co-creation, we as people, as third dimensional beings, I'd say, are a part of creation, are a part of the oneness, are a part of, if somebody wants to call it God, consciousness, You can think about it in whatever words they want in terms of this bigger picture creation life force energy.
Well,
Now, as they are a creator within them, in this what's the illusion of separation, they creating everything in their life for a reason that I think the biggest reason is for the sake of experience, especially for the sake of experience in the third dimensional
mhm.
bodies with the five senses, to feel that experience. It can come from feel what sadness feels like, what abuse feels like, what joy feels like. It all comes with a purpose of learning a lesson and also having the other side of the coin, the polarity of feeling the real low vibrations in order to feel the high vibration again. I do think creation, in a way, came from this very pure, beautiful love and very little density to it. And by choice, and a part of energy of that creation decided to separate, let's say, in that way, to be able to experience those states. And that's why we're here. We're here to for the sake of experience. And once one perhaps, and I would say understands, but it's my subjective point of view that others relate to, and perhaps it's a certain frequency or collective thinking, comes to terms with this way of living, then I think, as you were saying, life becomes much more joyful and easy in this way of thinking, oh, I can create anything. I've created already everything in my life. I am fully responsible, and I can create whatever else I want to. If I want to change something about it, it's my responsibility and only my responsibility. Nobody's doing anything to me. Not my parents, not my spouse, not my friend, not the person in traffic. Nobody's doing anything to me because I'm in the oneness.
Mhm.
I chose for all of this to happen. And whether this was before I came into this density or while in this density and everyday choices, every thought, etc. So this is the way I like to think about it.
We
We are creators. We're constantly creating, and we're creating for the sake of experience. And I hope this message resonates with some of you who are listening to this right now and thinking like, oh yeah, this feels true in my heart. And then I will say also, for the ones that say like, that's quite the bullshit right there, take a look and say and
well,
notice if you have the capacity to notice if this is coming from your mind or coming from your heart. And I would say I'm still working on that, to distinguish between those two sources of wisdom. So that's a challenge right there to anybody who's listening and had the latter, or even in any instance, to see if it's coming from their mind or coming from their heart. It's something that I keep working on, and I think it's very beneficial to be able to distinguish.
an exercise that I experienced, one that really let me set into this, is something like you think about something in your past that was some key event that you weren't happy about. That was, and what you do is then you write that down. This is the event. You write it down how it happened, and then you look at it from an external perspective, from like a third person perspective, and you write about that event with emphasis as to your role in creating that event. And that changed the framework, because we're usually seeing the world like
Mm.
this happened to me, this happened to me, this world is happening to me, blah, 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 blah. And then when you take the time to write this event, and my event had to do with fourth grade, where I was always in trouble. And I look at the event of how I co-created, and I look at it from the perspective of outside, from a third person perspective, not from a perspective of Michael did this, or Michael had this happen to him. The script that we have is that things happen to us normally, but when you look at it in the third person perspective, you see all of the factors, including your own contribution to that. And it's very,
Mm.
it's an eye opener, because it was like, oh, I did create that. And so forth with all other things that happen in your life, for in large majority, can be tied down to things that you actually resulted in. It sounds simple, but sometimes we don't believe it. And when we're integrated into the idea that things happen to us rather than we impinging on the world ourselves, and having something to do with it, we feel powerless. We feel like a victim. We feel like we can do nothing, and nothing correctly. So I just want to throw that exercise out there that a person can do should they choose to.
Thank you for that. That's a fantastic exercise. I have not done it myself, I will say. And as you were saying this, I'm thinking, what would it take for somebody to have one, the willingness to the courage to do this exercise? And one scenario came to mind, and that's if somebody's going through a divorce and they realize that this process is tough. They already were in love, most likely. I won't say most likely, but there's a chance they were in love with this other person. Now they're going through separation and perhaps some resentment. And while this process is unfolding, would it be helpful for them? And this is the one scenario I can think of, to do this exercise, to find more compassion, more love for this other part of themselves
Mhm.
that they had a contract or perhaps still has a contract with. And then I was thinking, if you have other examples of people that would be motivated to do this exercise in a specific situation.
Well, I think the example of the divorce is a great example. So let's take, it takes two to tango, right? So anybody who is gotten divorced and is putting 100% of the blame for the marriage not to have worked out on the other person. This is, it's just that bitch would just have done this, or that asshole would have just done this. If they're 100% on that sort of side, I'm not to blame at all. It's the other person all the time. Guess what's going to happen? What happens, what we've seen happen a million times. They're going to get into another relationship. They are going to co-create a new reality that follows the same pattern of BS behavior. And they're going to get into the same person. They're going to repeat the cycle of their reacting in the world rather than responding with the other person. The best case scenario, which is something that I did to change my life, transform my life, because I'm also in the process of trying to finish up this divorce, was to look at it where the other person is their own person, right? The partner in the relationship. What I need to do is, what did I do throughout the entire history of the relationship that contributed to this, and really take a deep awareness about the contributing factors that I do. Never mind what the other person did, you know, that's her issue, right? That's what she needs to do. On the other side is, if she just says, oh, if Michael just did this and the other thing, she's not taking any responsibility. It's all me. But so I went into the approach, and you used a divorce as an example of are all that, like, really hash out, what are all the contributing factors that I did that led to this relationship not working? And then what that allowed me to do was go, oh, let's not do that again. From like not not looking at red flags in the beginning of the relationship to being in a certain way throughout the relationship. There's a ton of things that I did that contributed to the relationship not working out. And if I had not taken responsibility, I'm currently now in like the amazing relationship for 3 years now. It just gets better and better. And I decree it to be only that way because I am approaching the new relationship, not remaking the mistakes that I did in the past relationship, because I did that sort of thing. I think the best, and to answer your question, because I really like the example of divorce. And I also explain people that when they're leaving a romantic relationship with them, they really need to do a post-mortem on their contribution so that they don't repeat the same process. And many people don't. Many people just blame the other person, move on to the next person, get divorced again, blame the other person. And if they look at both relationships now, or 3 relationships in a row, 3 marriages in a row, they'll see that the same patterns of behavior, and we all have seen it with people that we know. The other important thing, because I think connection with others is the most important thing. Anybody, you could do this sort of exercise and be motivated to do it with anybody that you have a soured relationship with, somebody that you don't get along with, and find out what are the key factors. Sometimes it's that is causing you and the other person to not get along. What is your contributing factors? Doesn't mean you're going to fix it, but just recognize your contribution to it. It might be that it might be something as simple as not empathizing with their point of view. Maybe they're talking about the challenge that they have with you from an emotional point of view, and you're talking it from a rational point of view, right? And just like, oh, we're talking on different levels. But then when you go back to this person, if you want to maintain a relationship, say, oh, they're coming from an emotional point of view. I'm going to meet them at their emotional point of view, right? I'm going to like honor how they're coming to it. And once they feel that they've been heard and understood, now I can come to them and explain my rational point of view from like, well, I think this is this from this perspective. And they are more likely maybe to meet me and engage me where I am, because we're interlocking in the same sort of modalities. Other things like if you get fired from a job, like what were the things that could be different? If you're just, oh, my boss was an a-hole, right? Okay, what are you going to do about that? You can't do anything about that. But if you realize like, well, I could have maybe engaged with my boss, enrolled him in working with me. I could have maybe not have been so butting heads with that person. I don't know what a person who got laid off from a job is, but the people that get laid off from a job and then blame the employer, because they did a crappy job and they're like, well, they didn't go on. Those people are not taking responsibility, and those people will go from job to job to job, just like from relationship to relationship to relationship. So any part of your life that you want to improve, it behooves you to do this exercise and see where your contribution was so that you don't make the same mistakes in the future.
That's awesome. That's a great example there. I love it. Thank you for sharing all of that. Yeah. What would you say to somebody who's listening to this conversation, is pretty excited about what we've been talking about with responsibility, with doing the work as masculine men, the impact of the work that we're doing, the possibilities? What would you say to somebody who's thinking like, hey, I want to do this work, but deep down, whether they're saying this or not, I'm like, it sounds pretty scary to do this work, and no, I'm not going to do it right now. Maybe in the future. What would you say to that person?
I would say, well, first of all, I would let them know that being nervous or anxious around doing the work around these tender parts of self is perfectly, I don't like to use the word normal, but it's a reasonable, more than healthy. It's a normal way to be. Like, you're going to go unpack what's outside of normal awareness. You're going to like bring it to the light, bring the shadow to the light, so to speak. And you don't, there's a feeling that there's something under there that you don't want to know, or like, something like that. But what I can promise is that there's the aha experience that one has doing this type of work of like, oh, that's what I've done, or, oh, that's how this works, or, oh, I need to do this. That kind of experience never comes as a big, giant surprise. It just comes as a deep, like, acceptance of like, oh yes, it's kind of been gnawing at the back of my head, these ideas of like whatever these things might be. But when they burst into full bright light awareness, they're not scary. What might be scary is that you might have to do things, and it might and like, oh, okay, now I'm going to have to like really engage in the world in a more effortful and co-creative way, where I had been avoiding in the past, for example. So that might be scary that you actually have to do, because now you're responsible and you see how these things work. It's basically just fear of the unknown. It's not fear of anything else, but I don't know what life will be after this happens. And we get also used to our suffering. We get addicted to our suffering. We get addicted to the chaos in our lives and the way things are, because we don't know what it will be like. Humans don't like change. I mean, there's lots of research. Humans will rather stay in a miserable situation than take action to get out of it, because getting out of it's different. It changes the whole reframing of the entire like system. And what's that going to be? And what I can tell you is that on the other side of that clarity is peace. It is a lot more of those higher levels of consciousness that you were talking about. And that's what I would say. And then for starters, and in terms of, what was the second part of the question was, what would I say that to say now is not the right time to do this. Like, I'd like to do this work, but now it's not the right time. That's just your fear against speaking. That's just someone's like, it's never going to be the right time. Sometimes the when you're going through the hardest moments is the best time to do this, because all that crap that is affecting you and that you're reacting to in the world and co-creating in the world, it's happening now. So it's present in your life. So yeah, it's something that someone taught me, and ayahuasca told me one time, is how long do you want to suffer? How long do you want to suffer? Yeah, that's fine. Today's not the right time. You're in a miserable situation that you want to change, or you have this angst about existence, and you have maybe in a miserable job or whatever. Okay. How long do you want to suffer? You want to do it now? Okay. You could continue along the same path for another year. And then when the email comes out that this opportunity is here again, and you're going to come to it, well, it's not a right time. I'm thinking about, maybe when I'm in the better headspace and whatnot. Okay. Then you go another year and eventually you come to it either through MOI or go to therapy or have some other transformational experience or work. And then you come to the same spot. But meanwhile, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 years, a lifetime has passed where you could have suffered less. So that's what I would say. Somebody who doesn't want to do it now because it's not the right time.
That's great. Thank you. What came to mind that I want to add on is that this work, and we say that it's not for everybody. I want to say that this work is for people who are looking and have the desire to feel more whole and to enjoy their life more. For people like, I'm pretty good. I like this experience. I'm okay with settling for what is. Some of the things in my life I'm not really happy about. I wish I could let them go, but I am fearful that if I take medicine, I'm going to lose my mind. I'm going to lose my spouse. I'm going to lose my sense of familiarity and some certainty in the outcomes and state of beings. Then that's perhaps not for them. They're choosing to settle for the experience that they have. They're not looking for growth. This experience is not for them. This work is for people that are looking for growth, that are interested in something, in looking behind the curtain and seeing what is the unknown, what does the unknown have to offer to me? Will it feel scary? Will there be some anxiety about it? There will be. There's anxiety and a bit fear coming before every time I do anything that is new, or even if I do something in every ceremony that I've participated in has been different than the other. So every time it's there, what is the level of that fear, uncertainty, and all that? It's subtle in my state because I came to the acceptance and surrender over time that I know that I'm looking forward to what's to come. I do know that I can be presented with something pretty challenging. And whether that's ancestral trauma or whether that's seeing a part of me from this life or from a past life that is ugly, that can definitely be an experience. I do know that bringing in these shadows, and as you like to call them, the darker shadows of the things that are ugly, or the golden shadows, the beautiful things that we may have not discovered about ourselves, of the gifts or whatnot that we have to share with the world, such as doing men of integrity retreats. Never even knew that's in the cards for me. Thought I'm keep my left brain dominant life in the computer tech programming world, so that's part of it. For the people that are cold, they do have the desire to experience more, to become more whole, to live as the best version of themselves, to keep evolving. This work is for you. If this sounds like you, will it take courage? It will take a good amount of courage. It will take commitment, and it will take a few more things, such as taking action. And yes, I'd like to leave our audience with this message, and with the message that we are there for them whenever they're ready to do this work. Of course, it takes a certain amount of discernment on our part when we talk to the person, and there are all kinds of filters that we put before we engage in this deep experience, before we feel good about somebody being stable to do this experience. So if this is you, please reach out to us. Go check out moi.community. I will put the link in the show notes. It's also on my website. If you want to check Michael's website, that's michaeltiernoguide.com. Am I correct?
Yes.
And then your can you give your retreat center website?
It's heartsanctuaryretreats.com.
And is there anything else you would like to add before we?
I would say,
end this one.
I would just say, like, if you're interested but don't want to commit to, but are not ready to commit to any of these things, please reach out. There's a button on my webpage. There's a button on Yoni's webpage that says click for a free consultation, whatever. It's free. You can do it as many times as you want. You have more questions. My time is allocated on there. And if it's just like, hey, I want to know a little bit more of how this applies to me, or are there some steps that I could do, some baby steps to get there so that I'm going to be more easily entering into an MOI retreat, for example, or a retreat in things, I can talk with you. Yoni can talk with you to kind of like see where you're at and what your level of comfort is, so that there's, and it might just be some activities. It might be something that's not medicine related. It might be some way of interacting in the world, some awarenesses. We can do a lot of answering of your questions just in 20 minutes to half an hour. And if it's longer, it's longer. It's just, we're here. This is, like Yoni said earlier, this is about the passion for the joy that we have seen in people's lives after they've done the work. And it's an incredible honor to witness this, to witness this pain transform into joy, this lack of feeling that they're an active and participant in the world, that turn into like, I can do this, and people taking action, like in the middle of the retreat, starting an LLC, and like, I've been meaning to do this. Like, I was up last night, I couldn't sleep, I had to do this. I got online and I started the LLC that I've been putting off for all these months, and like, I'm doing it now. And then like, sign up for the certification, just people moving through life to get the things done that it was always behind the door that they wanted to do these things. And it's just like, push forward and say, I can do this. Watching people get inspired with the purpose and with the goodness that they have within them is an honor and a pleasure. And it's amazing. It's like you, it's my favorite work that we do.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We're here to be of service to you, to the universe, and beyond. And we appreciate you listening and taking the time to do everything that you're doing and co-creating this experience. So thank you, everybody, and a big aho to MOI community and everybody else. Thank you. Aho.
Thank you, Yoni. Thank you for having me on here and doing this work.
Thank you, Michael Tierno. Thank you for being my partner and for everything you're doing. Aho.
Aho.
Well, lovely beings, I hope you enjoyed and were inspired by this conversation as much as I was. You can find the full show notes and all episodes on my website at yonihavana.com/podcast. If you are a man and you are called to do transformational work to become a better man, to find and grow the divinity within you, and you are longing a community of masculine men who share a passion for growth, please check out Men of Integrity by going to moi.community. Lastly, if you are enjoying the Yoni Havana podcast, I'd be so grateful if you take a moment to leave us a rating and a review on your podcast app of choice. The Yoni Havana podcast is a brand new show, and your support would help reach new people by rating higher on the algorithms. Also, your feedback would help me deliver the best experience to you as the show keeps evolving. Much love and a big aho. See you on the next one.